Hi, Dr. Gila here. It's hard to believe that we are at the end of May, but here we are. We are almost at summer break here in upstate New York, but wherever you are in the world, I think it's safe to say that this is a time of transition. Summertime is different than the rest of the school year for most people. And so I wanted to share with you a few of my top tips. I did do a recent episode with Debbie Reber from Tilt Parenting, and we chatted about some ideas for supporting your neurodivergent kids and yourself through the summer. And I also have an episode back in December about how to get through the holiday season. And a lot of the tips that I shared there apply here as well. So I will link to those two episodes in the show notes. But for today, I wanted to record a shorter episode with 5 tips to keep in mind as you're navigating the summer months with your kiddo. I hope it's helpful. Welcome to Single Parenting with Connection, Not Perfection, the podcast that honors your messy reality. It's the support you crave without the usual emotional landmines. I'm your host, Dr. Gila, and I promise I will never tell you to just tag your partner in. Before we start, quick reminder. While I am a licensed psychologist and a certified coach, this podcast is not coaching and it's not therapy, and it's not a replacement for medical or psychological advice. It is for educational and informational purposes only. All right, let's dive in. There are a lot of things that can be different about summer. For some families, it is a less busy time. For some families, it's a busier time. For most families, it's a different time. And so, my number one tip is the idea that context is king. So, what I mean by that is that it is very possible, maybe even probable, that you and or your kids will have a hard time in some way or another at some point this summer. And I have noticed for myself that when I can remember and notice and hold in mind that there are contextual things that are happening that are contributing to why my child is having a particularly hard time or I'm having a particularly hard time, it is so helpful in bringing my compassionate lens because everything sort of falls into place and makes sense. I remember one incident in particular from last summer when my kiddo and I were really just butting heads about everything. Things were feeling tense. And I had this sudden moment of recognition and realization that, of course, things were feeling hard because we had just gotten back from a trip where we were with his dad and his dad's family, and we don't see them very often. And so, of course, that brought up all kinds of feelings for him and also for me. And the re-entry into real life was bringing up things for each of us in different ways. I was feeling really stressed about everything that needed to get done, and he was feeling like he needed to not get a lot of things done. He needed some downtime. So it made sense. We were in different places, and both of us were in places with some real heightened emotional intensity and things that we were worried about or thinking about. As soon as I really remembered that context, I immediately felt so much more compassion for both of us, so much more patience, and I was able to slow things down and really meet both of us where we were in a much better way. So, when your child is having a meltdown, having a tantrum, if you're having major power struggles this summer, I really invite you to keep that in mind. What is going on that might be contributing to that? And to go in with eyes wide open, hope for the best and expect the worst. To go in with the expectation that there probably will be bumps and that that's completely understandable. I am going to also put in the show notes a link for my free printable guide that helps you understand why these big episodes, the meltdowns and things like that, why they happen. Because a lot of the things that could contribute are probably things that are going to be happening over the summer. And the more you can understand where these behaviors are coming from, the more you can support your kid in a productive and effective way, and also yourself. So I'll put the link in the show notes. You can also just go to parentingwithconnection.com/guide. Okay, so that's tip number one. Context is king. Remember the context. Go in with your eyes wide open and keep that in mind. And tip number two is that connection is queen. And I don't mean to gender this. It was just my little fun way of expressing that these are, I think, two of the most important things to keep in mind. And there's a few things that I want to say about connection. First of all, your connection with your child and your relationship with your child, I believe, is the best tool in your toolkit. This is your biggest asset. Now, when I say connection, people often start thinking of these big, we're going to spend a whole day doing all their favorite things and having their favorite dinner and all that stuff. And while an exciting day like that is, of course, awesome, if and when you can make it happen, connection does not require these big actions or big movements. So, my invitation to you is to think about what are small ways that you can proactively build connection into your life. And this might mean every day making sure that there are conversations with your child where you are focused on listening and hearing and receiving and understanding and validating, not giving commands or demands, right? Telling them to do something or to not do something, not correcting their behavior or really expecting anything from them. These moments where we are simply holding space for our kids and really sort of seeing them and hearing them are so incredibly powerful. Also, things like parallel time, as we call it in my house, can be surprisingly effective with connection. You're not even directly interacting, but you're maybe sitting side by side on the couch and reading your own books or playing a game quietly or something like that. Even, dare I say it, on a screen, but doing it next to each other. Maybe your feet are touching or something like that, or even not touching. These little moments can be surprisingly effective for connection. And speaking of screens, I also think that joining our kids in their screen worlds is a really underrated and really powerful tool for connection building. And if it's something, so I will tell you, I have a really hard time joining my kid in his Minecraft world because visually and just from a sensory perspective, I have trouble with Minecraft. I don't tolerate it very well. So if that's the case for you, or you just really can't handle it, then asking them to tell you about whatever it is that they're doing on the screen can also be a really powerful and beautiful connection moment. And then the last piece I want to mention about connection is I'm a huge believer in having collaborative problem solving and planning conversations with our kids. So the more we can give them authentic voice and help them feel like they are a part of the team, they are not simply being told what to do by the adults. They really have a voice in your family and they have choice and they have some decision-making power and they're involved in those processes. The more we can do that, the more they feel empowered and respected, the more they will respect you and cooperate instead of, so this is where we get cooperation as opposed to compliance, which really often comes from a place of fear. So from my perspective, I would much rather have cooperation built on communication and mutual respect than compliance built on fear and punishment. By the way, I am in the beginning stages of planning something really exciting for December, all about navigating screen time with connection, not control. I'm really excited about this. Stay tuned. You will be hearing more about it soon. So that's my little teaser for now. Okay, so tip one, context is king. Tip two, connection is queen. So those are two things to do to keep the context in mind and make sure that you're having connection throughout your day. Now, tip three and four are things that I'm going to invite you to drop wherever possible with the understanding that this is much easier said than done. So the first one is, so tip three is to drop the shoulds. I know this is much easier said than done. I know that we live in a society that has lots and lots of shoulds, so much so that we internalize the shoulds. So it doesn't always feel like it's an expectation coming from the outside, but it's something that we think that we should do. But when you pause and think about what would actually serve your family best, often that is counter to what societal shoulds say. So maybe that means you don't take the huge vacation that you see everyone else posting on in Facebook and Instagram because you know that for your family, the vacation will be super stressful. Maybe it's going to be really hard for you financially. Maybe it's really stressful because it throws your schedules and your routines and familiarity in a blender, and your kid really has a hard time with that. And I know maybe you, in theory, really want to be able to do that. And so giving yourself permission to grieve the fact that that isn't the best decision right now. Now, I'm not saying you can't go on a big vacation. By all means, enjoy a big vacation if that's going to work out well for your family. What I'm inviting you to do is to pause and really be intentional and think about what decisions you're making for the summer. And one of the big ones, I think, is about how scheduled you are. So for some kids, they do much better when there is a really busy schedule. There's a lot going on. But I think also for a lot of kids and a lot of adults, we really undervalue rest. And over the summer, it can be an opportunity to lean into a little bit of a looser schedule, less commitments, and to have more time and space for rest and recovery. So think about what your personal priorities are for your family and remember, even though it's really hard, trust me, I know it's really hard to go against the grain, against the norm. But when you can make decisions that are prioritizing your family's personality and capacity and needs, your things are going to go much more smoothly. Okay, so dropping the shoulds. And then I have the next tip, tip four, is another drop, and that's dropping the shame. And I think this is even harder than dropping the shoulds and maybe even more important. So that big vacation that you can't go on because you can't afford it or because it's not working, right? Dropping the shame around that. Screens are a big one. I know there's a lot of shame around screens. Again, this is one of the reasons why I'm going to do an event in December. But for now, what I want to say is that we live in a system, in a society, in a culture that is just not built for success for single parents and certainly not single parents of neurodivergent kids, if that's you. And honestly, even partnered parents struggle with this. It's not just a single parent thing, but I think it is more magnified in single parent homes. And so, my invitation is to bring grace and compassion to yourself and to your kids and yes, sometimes to loosen up those reins on screens, if it means that things are going to go more smoothly, that you are going to be able to get the space and the peace that you need to stay regulated in the hard moments, which is so important and if it's going to help your kid stay regulated. Now, I know this is far from a simple topic, and you might be thinking, well, it doesn't keep my kid more regulated. And I get that. Trust me, that's the case in my house also. So there's a lot more to talk about with screens. That's why I'm planning this whole event in December. But today, my simple message is to bring grace and compassion to yourself and to your child, whether it comes to using screens or not doing the big vacation or skipping the 4th of July cookout because that's also going to be too stressful for either you or your kids, right? So dropping the shoulds and also the shame that often can come with making decisions that are aligned with what is helpful for you and your kids, but that is misaligned with expectations that society places on us. My last tip is that summer can be a beautiful opportunity to gather data, make observations, and really notice to build your awareness muscle and notice what kinds of things make it hard for your child to stay regulated, what kinds of things make it hard for you to stay regulated, where do you butt heads and find yourself always in power struggles, right? Because there's so many moving pieces in summer that it brings up a lot of different things. And so this is a place where that free resource that I mentioned before, I think could be really helpful. My guide to understanding these challenging episodes like meltdowns, tantrums, and rages. It lays out why kids have a hard time and why parents have a hard time, and an acronym that covers the 7 main categories of things that can really fill your sink, as I like to say, right? Can make you or your child closer to threshold for getting dysregulated. And understanding that and really building the awareness muscle, as I like to say, is the first step. And it's a big first step and an important first step. So summer can be a great opportunity for that. And I'm going to invite that mindset reframe when your child is having a hard time to welcome that as data, right? Ah, okay, this is information. This is useful to know. And to take a moment to think about what happened and see, can you notice some patterns? And can that help you inform decisions, like I was talking about before, the decisions that you make, the shoulds that you drop, the shame that you drop to better meet everybody's needs? So get curious, put on that scientist lens, and I'm curious to hear what you learn by the end of the summer. All right, that's it for now. Again, I'll put in the show notes the link to those other 2 podcast episodes that I mentioned. I am also going to link the episode that I did with Ash Brandon about screen time because it has some really, really thought-provoking and powerful mindset shifts and things to think about. So hopefully that's helpful. And I will put a link to that free resource, the printable guide on understanding these big behavior episodes. Or you can go to parentingwithconnection.com/guide. And remember, whatever happens this summer, I am out here cheering you on and available to support you if and when you need it. That's it for this episode. I am so glad you found your way here. And remember, even if you're on your own, you don't have to do it alone. You've got this.